Excuse me, could you come over here for a second? A staff member at the care facility quietly approached me saying this. The woman, who had been friendly until just now, was looking at me with a serious expression. My brother, his wife, and I were visiting today to choose a nursing home for our mom. As I was about to call my brother and his wife, the woman firmly grabbed my hand. It's important, so please come alone, please. My name is Sarah, and I'm currently a 32-year-old working in an office. I'm still single, enjoying being a bachelorette, while dedicating myself to my job every day. This year marks exactly 10 years since I graduated from university and started working in the city. That means I've been away from my hometown for a full 10 years. My family home is in the countryside, surrounded by nothing but rice paddies and fields, and it's quite a distance from the city where I now live. During my student years, I used to commute to a university in the next town over, which took an hour each way. To visit home from where I live now, it's a 4 to 5 hour drive. Because of that, I only go back a few times a year, during the end-of-year holidays or the Bon Festival period. My 63-year-old mom, my brother, and his wife live in our country home. After my dad passed away, my mom had been living alone at our family home, but about 6 months ago, she had an accident and injured her leg. She was involved in a car accident while out shopping in town. Since she couldn't walk well due to the accident, leaving her alone was not an option. That's why my brother and his wife moved in with her to take care of her. My brother Tyler and his wife Kathy, who is a year younger than him, run their own business and seem to be leading a busy life. They renovated a part of the house into Kathy's office, making it easier for them to care for our mom since they are always home. My brother, who had his fair share of troubles in the past, assured me confidently, "You can leave mom's care to us." I wish I could help out more, but since I can't visit home often, I've left everything regarding mom up to them. Occasionally, I only manage to catch up with mom over the phone, which is the extent of our interactions. Hello mom, yeah, I just got off work. Good job, Sarah, actually. What's up? She seemed to struggle to say something, as if it's difficult for her to express. During the silence, I could hear my brother's voice from the other end of the phone. It seemed like he was calling for mom. Sorry, it's nothing. Talk to you later. Take care of yourself. Mom said quickly, and then hung up the phone. We hardly had any conversation. I felt like she was in a rush, but I wondered if something had happened. That day, I was a little puzzled by mom's behavior. About 2 weeks later, after a tiring day at work, I got a sudden call from my brother on my cell phone. I hardly ever talk to my brother, who's 4 years older than me. Part of it is because we're both busy with work. More than that, however, I've always found it hard to get along with him since he had many issues in the past. Every time I talk to him, I just can't help but feel intimidated. So I was surprised when he called, thinking it must be something urgent. When I answered, his tone was more like giving a work report than catching up between siblings. Actually, mom has developed dementia. We can't take care of her anymore, so we've decided to put her in a facility. Kathy and I are too busy with work, so could you look for a place for her? What? Wait, Tyler. After delivering his message, my brother hung up without waiting for my response. Mom has dementia. My brother definitely said that. There were no signs of it when we last spoke. I was a bit upset that Tyler told me to look for a facility, but I couldn't refuse when I thought about mom. She's my only, very important mother, after all. Luckily, I have a 3-day weekend starting the day after tomorrow. I decided to use this break to go back to the countryside. 2 days later, I drove early in the morning and arrived at my family home around noon. It seemed my brother and his wife were at work, and only mom was at home. Mom, I'm home. It's been a while, hasn't it? Sitting in the living room chair, my mother turned her eyes towards me, but her expression was vacant. She blankly stared at me, but soon snapped back to reality and smiled warmly. Oh, it's really been a while. Welcome back, Mary. It's me, Sarah. Oh, yes, that's right. I believe Mary was my aunt's name. It seems my mother recognizes me as her daughter, but she seems to have forgotten my name. Moreover, trying to continue the conversation only brings back vague responses. She's vastly different from the mother I talked to on the phone before, and instead of being perplexed, I felt sad. But I couldn't just wallow in sadness, so I sat next to my mother and explained about moving into a nursing home. I wasn't sure if explaining was the right thing to do, but I couldn't just take her to an unfamiliar place and tell her this is where she'll be living from now on. My mother quietly listened and nodded as I spoke. I see, it seems I've been a burden on you all. It appeared she understood about moving into the nursing home, her voice dropping in a disheartened manner. She didn't oppose it or express her dissatisfaction, accepting it smoothly. Seeing my mother become so frail pained my heart. I used the internet and other sources to search for facilities nearby and narrowed down a few options. However, when I called them directly, almost all of them had no vacancies. There was only one place that seemed available for immediate admission. When I explained our situation to the director there, they were very understanding. I was told to come for a visit first, so I decided to take my mother there tomorrow. The next morning, I went to the facility I had contacted the day before in my car, accompanied by my mother and my brother and his wife. It seems my brother and his wife had taken the morning off. However, they didn't even try to hide their reluctance. Perhaps thinking my mother wouldn't understand anything before we even arrived at the facility. Upon arrival, we received a brief explanation from the director I had spoken to on the phone yesterday. The director was a kind-looking middle-aged man who had prepared a wheelchair for my mother. She was having difficulty walking and was waiting for our arrival. He was very attentive in answering our questions, and the impression was very good. Afterward, we were guided through the facility by two female staff members. Throughout the visit, my mother was restless and fidgety. She might have been nervous about being in a new place for the first time. While occasionally speaking to her, I pushed her wheelchair. When we were told by a staff member it was time to see the room where my mother would actually be living, I excused myself, saying, "Sorry, may I use the restroom?" and decided to go. "Please go ahead without me, Mom. I'm just going to the restroom. My brother will push your wheelchair." Mary. As soon as I finished speaking, my mother suddenly started shouting. Just like yesterday, she repeatedly called out the name Mary, my aunt's name. "You, Mary, come here for a moment." My mother beckoned to one of the female staff members who was guiding us. She looked a bit younger than me. When she introduced herself earlier, she said her name was Helena. "What's the matter?" Helena approached and bent down to listen, as my mother started tapping the handle of the wheelchair, looking behind. My brother and his wife looked on at my mother with an exasperated expression. "Don't worry, your mother's in good hands," Helena said with a reassuring smile. I bowed deeply and stepped away for a moment. Helena seemed like a good person. I felt I could trust someone like her with my mother. Feeling relieved but also a bit sad at the same time, I left the restroom and entered the hallway. Then, as if waiting for me, a staff member grabbed my arm. Startled, I exclaimed, "How?" only to see it was Helena, whom I had just entrusted with my mother's care. Is something wrong?" "There's something important I need to discuss. This way, please." Helena, looking unusually hurried, let go of my hand and guided me somewhere. Confused, I sensed something serious from her urgent gaze and quietly followed her. "Please make sure to keep this confidential from other family members," Helena whispered to me, turning around midway as if she was sharing a secret. After I gave a noncommittal she stopped in front of a door. "Please, come in," she said, opening the sliding door for me, and I stepped into the room first. A surprising scene awaited me inside. "Mom!" Somehow my mother, who was supposed to be touring the facility, was inside the room. She was seated in her wheelchair, facing a desk in the room. Across the desk sat the facility's director, who remained silent with a serious expression on his face. My mother turned to me with a face that looked like she was about to cry. "What's going on here?" Helena, who had closed the door and come inside, approached me, saying, "Please, take a seat first," and gestured towards an empty chair next to my mother. Trying to calm my racing heart, I sat down, and Helena took a seat next to the director. "Sarah, I'm sorry." My mother apologized, looking into my face. "Mom, do you recognize me?" "Of course I do. You're my precious daughter. Thank you for coming back from so far away." Despite her sad expression, the mother I remembered so well was there. I felt like I was going to cry. But what does this mean? It's hard to believe she has dementia when my mother's responses are so coherent. I looked towards the director and Helena, seeking an explanation. Both had pained expressions, but then the director clearly stated, "Please call the police right now." "Police? Why?" I couldn't understand why he was suddenly asking to call the police. Trying to calm my confusion, Helena began to speak. "Please, stay calm and listen. The truth is, your mother..." She began to speak in a grave tone. It turned out my mother was not suffering from dementia at all. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, my mother had been receiving terrible treatment from my brother and his wife. But my mother, unable to walk well, could not seek help from anyone, and pretended to have dementia. She thought my brother and his wife would surely put her in a facility where she could seek help, even if they kept a close watch on her. Admission to a facility requires a health examination by a doctor. So she planned to ask for help at the hospital or from a physician. Just before I went to the restroom, my mother had called Helena under the pretense of needing her wheelchair pushed, but secretly to confide the mistreatment she was enduring. She whispered to Helena when she saw an opportunity, making sure my brother and his wife didn't notice. Surprised, Helena immediately separated her from my brother and his wife under the pretext of wanting a private consultation with my mother. After hiding my mother in this room and examining her body, they found traces of multiple beatings and bruises, which they reported to the director. That's why they came to get me while I had stepped out to use the restroom. Faced with such shocking facts, I felt dizzy. I don't have the courage to look at my mother's injuries right now. Tears started rolling down my cheeks uncontrollably. I had no idea my mother was undergoing such treatment from my brother and his wife, and I feel ashamed for not having done anything until now. When we talked on the phone before, she must have been trying to ask for my help. This is no time to cry. Let's contact the police before your siblings notice anything. The director stood up and encouraged me. Helena nodded in agreement. I immediately left the room, leaving my mother in Helena's care, and rushed to the nearest police station, making sure my brother and his wife didn't suspect anything. The director accompanied me, and upon explaining the situation to the police, they took the matter seriously and acted quickly. We hurried back to the facility with 2 officers and went straight to the room where my mother was waiting. The officers listened to my mother's account and confirmed multiple injuries on her arms and back, which appeared to be from assault. Then they apprehended my unsuspecting brother and his wife, who were still touring the facility, and began interrogating them. My brother and his wife were brought to the room where my mother, the facility staff, and I were waiting, and they were shocked the moment they surveyed the room. Their interrogation began in a corner of the room, and I quietly watched the scene unfold. My mother was shivering uncontrollably. It was clear from her state that she had been terribly frightened. "Are you telling me that you think we've done something to Mom just because she's injured? How does that lead to us? Right? Considering Mom's bad leg, couldn't she have fallen at home?" Both my brother and his wife maintained their innocence, claiming they had no idea what was happening. "Do you have any proof we did it? Mom's stories can't be trusted. She's confused. It must be all in her head." "It's not in my head," my mother said in a clear voice, after remaining silent and looking down. My brother, who had been smirking, thinking he was in the clear, looked at my mother in shock. "Everything I said earlier is true. The injuries on my body were all inflicted by those 2. I have kept a diary of all the mistreatment I received from my sons. I will hand it over later." "What?" My brother's eyes widened. Kathy's face turned pale. It was only now that my brother and his wife realized my mother did not have dementia. The officer calmly responded, "Understood. We will visit your home next. Please tell us more about the situation." The officer continued, urging my mother. Despite my brother and his wife glaring fiercely at us, my mother didn't flinch. She took a deep breath and began to speak quietly. It seems my mother started keeping a diary as potential evidence against my brother and his wife, who gradually neglected her care and even resorted to violence. My cell phone was confiscated, and the landline was monopolized by Kathy for her work, so I couldn't use it. Knowing they were doing wrong, they locked the room with the phone at night, keeping the keys, preventing me from secretly calling for help. They allowed occasional contact to prevent you from suspecting anything, but it was always under surveillance. That's why I couldn't say anything when talking to you. Unable to endure the endless waiting for help, I tried to escape from the house several times. But with my poor mobility and living in the countryside, I couldn't reach populated areas without a car. I was always found by them and brought back. Yet, I didn't give up. Exasperated by my repeated attempts to leave, Kathy said, "What a trouble her habit of wandering is. Oh, could it be dementia? If so, we might as well put her in a facility." Hearing the thoughtless words from Kathy, my mother realized something. She thought if she pretended to have dementia, she could escape this house. So my mother began to act vaguely and forget people's names, mimicking dementia. My brother and his wife quickly decided to place her in a facility but were reluctant to handle the paperwork and costs. So they contacted me. They had me search for the facility, came along for the visit out of obligation, and tried to push all the payment responsibilities onto me. These were direct conversations my brother and his wife had in front of my mother, pretending to have dementia. "Tyler, Kathy, how could you?" I couldn't hold back any longer and interrupted. "Tyler, you haven't changed at all since back then. You said to leave Mom to you. That was a lie too, wasn't it?" "Shut up, damn it, get out of the way." My brother, his temper flaring, shoved one of the police officers. He seemed to be trying to escape, but another officer quickly apprehended him. He was then arrested on the spot for obstructing official business. The police also planned to interrogate Kathy further for more details, and both were taken away by the officers. Damn it, it was supposed to work out. You'll remember this, you old hag." My brother was screaming. I gently covered my mother's ears. To her, my brother is still her own son, after all. In the afternoon of that day, several police officers arrived at our family home. A search was conducted, and evidence of neglect towards my mother was found, leaving me no choice but to feel disheartened. Furthermore, it was discovered that my mother's poor mobility was orchestrated by my brother and his wife. They had paid an employee at their company to cause a traffic accident involving her. As these facts came to light, my brother and Kathy were charged with assault and battery against my mother. Further investigation revealed that Kathy, who was always greedy, had incited my brother after learning about my mother's substantial savings. The inheritance left by our late father had gone directly to my mother. Kathy, along with my brother, had been scheming to get the inheritance transferred to them as soon as possible. It was also found that my brother's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he was desperate due to mounting debts, which made him quickly agree to Kathy's plan. My brother told the police, "Our mother always favored my sister over me." However, in reality, he had always been troublesome since our childhood, and my mother constantly had to clean up his messes. I thought he had matured and settled down as an adult. I was led to believe he cared deeply for our mother and was diligently taking care of her. But his true nature hadn't changed at all from the past. That's why I think he didn't hesitate to plan an accident for our mother to get her money, to abuse her, or to hurl insults at her. I can't see myself ever forgiving my brother or Kathy for what they've done. Later on, Tyler's company went bankrupt. After a thorough investigation exposed all their crimes, it was decided that both my brother and Kathy would be going to prison. The actions of my brother were so malicious that he was stripped of his inheritance rights to our mother's estate. He had apparently planned to inherit everything once my mother passed away, thinking it would just be a simple case of assault. Learning that they had lost their inheritance rights while behind bars, both my brother and Kathy became hysterical. They've since become apathetic, and it's unlikely they'll lead a normal life even if they do get out. My mother and I intend to cut ties with them. Since their arrest, my mother cried daily over being betrayed by her son, but has recently begun to find peace. Of course, the plan for her to move into a facility has been canceled. I still keep in regular touch with Helena, who played a significant role in encouraging me to report the situation. She was even awarded a commendation by the police for her role in saving my mother. Currently, I live with my mother, just the two of us. I couldn't leave my mom alone at our family home, so I suggested we live together and move to the city. Since the apartment I originally lived in was small, we moved to a larger place suitable for the two of us. Mom, it's nice out. Let's go for a walk. That sounds lovely. My legs feel good today, so maybe I'll try walking a bit. Yay, but don't push yourself too hard, okay? On holidays, I spend time walking around the neighborhood with my mom or enjoying a slightly fancy meal together. We've decided to spend our future peacefully, just the two of us, mother and daughter. I know, dear. Thank you, Sarah. I never imagined I'd be so happy to hear my mom call my name.